Hey everybody, Mason Marsh here. I am sitting here at my computer and I just installed the brand new Macphun image developer. I don't know what we really want to call it yet. I don't really know exactly what it is. I just know it's by Macphun, and these guys are amazing at making tools for us to process our images if we are working on a Mac, which I am a Mac person. So I bought the package and I installed it, and I have not used it yet. But I'm aware of some of the features of Lumina because they're similar to what you can find in Aurora, which is the Macphun HDR image handler. So I'm really excited to see this because a lot of people, like my friend Trey Ratcliffe, are talking about Lumina as being a more powerful version of Lightroom, a more adaptable version of Lightroom. And sometimes I find myself hitting the tops of the sliders in Lightroom, and so I figured, why not? See if we can take it up to 11, right? And so I'm going to give it a shot here. This is our very first stab at working on a photo with Lumina. And this is coming from a guy who works almost exclusively in Lightroom, a little bit in Photoshop, and sometimes in Aurora. And so I'm going to see if this has a place in my workflow. Maybe it'll replace Lightroom's development module for me, and I'll use Lightroom to catalog my images, and I'll process them in Lumina. Maybe it'll just be something I use occasionally. I don't know because I haven't tried it. So let's give it a shot. Here we are in Lightroom, and I've got a photo I took on the Palouse last spring that I haven't really ever done anything with. One of the challenges with this photograph is I exposed it to the right. If you look at the histogram there, you'll see that the highlights are really close to that right edge there. Because I was trying not to blow out the sky, but there's a lot of this truck that's in deep shadow, especially that wheel in the wheel well inside of this side of the truck that we're looking down. And so this is actually a really good candidate for Aurora. This would be a really good photo for Aurora because we're dealing with broad dynamic range in the image. But I don't know if I want it to look HDR-esque, if you will. I'd like it to look a little bit more regular, I guess. There's some other issues. I think it's a little crooked and things like that. So I'm not going to do anything with it in Lightroom. A lot of times what I would do if I was going to take this tool over to Aurora or to Photoshop is I would do some preliminary work in Lightroom. Straightening, cloning out dust specks, doing lens corrections, removing chromatic aberrations, that sort of thing. I'm going to see if Lumina can do that stuff. So let's go up here. So what I'm going to do is go up to the File menu in Lightroom and pull down to Plugin Extras and transfer to Lumina. Or Luminar. I've been saying Lumina. I don't even know what to call it. Luminar. Okay. So we're going to transfer to Luminar and see. This should open the raw file. I believe Luminar is a raw processor. So if it's not a raw processor, the game is over, right? I don't usually work with JPEGs, so let's hope this will do it. And it looks like it's doing it. It's raw denoising right now. And while it's working on it, I'm going to pull this window open all the way so I can work across my desktop here. And this looks very familiar to me. It feels a lot like the interface in Aurora. I've got a bunch of presets across the bottom and a palette of tools down the right hand side, nothing on the left hand side, and a little bit across the top. So I'm just going to take a quick walk across the top here. There's an apply button and a cancel button. So I'm assuming what would happen is if I clicked apply, it would just send this right back to Lightroom, included in the Lightroom catalog. I believe because I opened the raw file, it would not save this as a TIFF back into Lightroom. It would instead put another DNG next to it. I don't know. We'll see. I don't know what it's going to do. There's a zoom plus and minus if I wanted to zoom in on the image. And there's a fill. So there you go. Have that. What's the eyeball here? Quick preview. And then I always like the compare preview. So you click on it. It's got it before and after, and you can drag this across. This is really nice if you want to see what sort of damage you've done to your photo by clicking on a bunch of stuff. You can use this compare slider. Now over here on the upper right, we've got a histogram, which is showing here. I always have the histogram open, and it looks like a layers button. So I can click on and it adds a layers toolbar or layers palette. And so this is something you don't see in Lightroom. Lightroom doesn't do layers. So this is a Photoshop sort of feature. And so I can add layers. That's cool. It's cool. And then it looks like I can change how I have my view. So I can turn off the presets down there. That's nice. Make my workspace a little bigger. And I can turn off that right side palette. Now down the right hand side we have some tools. And it looks like we have a hand tool, which is move. And then we've got a masking brush. I'm guessing a gradient mask mode. Yep, gradient tool. Radial mask mode. Very nice. So those are familiar if you're a Lightroom user. This is crop or transform tool. Interesting. Okay, so that's a Photoshop type of thing. We can skew images or skew portions of an image maybe. Looks like a stamping tool. Clone and stamp, very good. Eraser, handy. Denoise tool. One of the things that Macphun is really good with is denoise. And I can't remember the name of their app that they've had. I've used it before, but they actually have one that does a really good job of handling noise in images. And it looks like here we have a crop tool. So interesting, they use scissors as the crop icon. That's confusing to me because I see scissors, I think, like cut and paste. And so I think almost everybody's used to cropping being a crop symbol. Anyway, maybe there's some proprietary stuff there. So those are the tools down the right-hand side. And then we're looking down the palettes here. We have, of course, the layers one. Then we have filters. And we have a thing here that says workspace. And it's set to default, but it looks like I can choose to prioritize these palettes by genre, I guess. Portrait, street, landscape. So let's click on landscape. Change something down at the bottom, but didn't change much. So if we just go with default, looks like it's structure or something moved. So it does look like I can create a customized workspace, which is sort of like Photoshop. And that's really nice. Something Lightroom doesn't really let you do. So that's pretty cool. And we can also clear it. Clear it just takes everything off. So all the palettes are gone. Wow. Okay. So you can add filter. I can just start adding. Can start adding palettes in depending on what I like to do. Now this is something I actually had read about with Luminar. I'm saying it right now. Luminar. The workspace is adaptable to your style. So if you want to be just doing really basic stuff, a la almost like a handheld device, like a Snapseed sort of approach, you can do that, or you can get really down into the weeds, sort of like Photoshop and Lightroom let you do. So here we have all the filters are selected, and what's cool about this is, and this is something I wish they had done in Aurora, to be honest, because coming from the Adobe environment to the Macphun environment, there was some lingo, some naming conventions I didn't quite understand, and I actually had to ask Trey a couple of times, like, what the hell does this mean? And so this is really nice. And so what they've done here is they've got a whole menu of all of the filters, which are going to, each one of these I'm guessing is going to be a palette, tool palette that'll show up here on the right. And it gives me a description, actually even shows me before and after. So if I start at the top, these are alphabetical. Adjustable gradient allows you to selectively adjust exposure, contrast, vibrance, and warmth. For 2 different parts of the image. So this, cool. So I can click on that and it would add it to the right here. Advanced contrast. I like that. I'm going to click on that. Cool. Okay, so I'm going to add a filter. Come over here. Black and white conversion, I don't do too much. Bicolor toning, not really a big fan. Brightness and contrast, a little basic. Clarity, I probably will do. Color balance for sure. Sure, why not? Color temperature, seems to me that would be important. Cross processing, I don't do too much. Curves, yeah, I might get into curves. That's a Photoshop thing. Details enhancer, yes, that's one that's I'd like to play with. Dramatic, creative filter that lowers saturation and increases contrast, gives you a gritty cinematic look. So it's sort of a bleach bypass, right? I'm going to pass up on dramatic right now. Exposure I want, right? Fog. So this is sort of like the dehaze filter in Lightroom, except they don't allow you to remove fog. It says here just add fog. So I don't want that. Foliage enhancer. Enhances the colors of foliage and greenery automatically, making. Let's try it out. Why not? We get foliage in this shot. Grain. I don't usually like to add grain, so I'm going to skip that. I don't do high key much. Highlights and shadows. HSL. Yeah, I definitely do HSL work. That's hue, saturation, and luminance. Image radiance. That's something I'm familiar with from Aurora. That can be kind of fun, so we'll throw that on the pile. Microstructure is a great way to do sharpening, so I'm going to add that. Orton effect, nah, not really. I'm past that. That's a real softening kind of filter. Photo filter, polarizing filter. Okay, we'll try it. Remove color cast, saturation, vibrance. Yes, probably want that. It's like going shopping. You get to shop for your tools. So sharpening for sure. Soft focus, no thank you. Soft glow, no thanks. Split color warmth, I might come back for that. Split toning, no, probably not right now. Structure, sure. That's something I like to have work on. Texture overlay, well, that's interesting. So this allows you to add custom textures as a layer. And this is something that you would normally have to take into Photoshop to do. Interesting. Tone. Now this is a basic one. That's a must-have palette. Top and bottom lighting. Yeah, I'll save that in vignette. I like to have control of that. And that's it. That's all my choices. Now they also break it down here into groups. So if you wanted to filter the filters, you've got a way to do that there. So we're going to click that off and get rid of that. Now we've got this palette thing here that's quite extensive, and it's not in a good order. So I'm going to see if I can take like tone. This is one of the first things I would do to an image, and I would like my palettes to be in order of how I do them. Now what I've noticed here is, and I don't think I missed it because I went down the whole list, there are no lens correction tools here. So I can't correct for distortion or vignetting in a specific lens using like a lens profile. That seems to be missing. Yeah, that's unfortunate. That's something that I do a lot in Photoshop. So all these down here, saturation, vibrance. We'll just leave all this stuff in that order. I think having my tone up here is probably a good place to start. Now, before I get too tied up in this right-hand side, I forgot I've got all these presets along the bottom, and one of the things I've realized in Aurora is this is often a good place to start with an image if you're not really sure, if you don't have a really clearly defined vision for what your photo to look like when you're done. You can test drive all kinds of different flavors of kind of processing feel, and these are the basic ones here. So we go clarity booster, image enhancer, mild image enhancer. Let's click on that. That's probably a good place to start. Oh, that is nice. So it boosted the colors a little bit, gave me a little bit of sharpening, and it changed my hold on. All my palettes I just added on the right are now gone, and I have just tone, saturation, vibrance, polarizing, filter, and clarity. So I'm going to go up here and undo and see if all my stuff comes back. So, okay. So if you click on a preset, it sets up a workspace based on the tools used in that preset and gets rid of any of the tools that you may have set up prior. Not sure I like that. So if I clicked on mild image enhancer because I wanted to sort of start there, but then I wanted to go work on sharpening, I would have to go back and add any sharpening tool palettes that I wanted from that pop-up menu. It doesn't seem very efficient to me, and maybe I'm missing something here. Maybe there's a way to build a workspace and then lock it, so no matter what preset you use, it doesn't change your palettes. But it seems to me, and then this is a little bit different than Aurora, it seems to me that by using presets, you're committing to a certain set of tools each time you click on a preset. So I'm just going to test that though. So let's go click on something different. Soft and airy. Yeah. Now I've got tone, saturation, vibrance, image radiance, and details enhancer. So if I undo that, now I go back to all my presets. So let's go under here. Okay, this is just like Aurora. So under presets, I've got these different types: basic, outdoor, travel, dramatic, portrait, and street, and more. And I guess it's going to send me to the Macphun site and says, hang on. We're finishing up new sets of presets for Luminar. They will be available on December 1st. Okay. Interesting. So if we click on all presets, and now it's going to give us a whole bunch, right? It's going to give us everything that they've got. So let's just pick one that's really weird. Like enigmatic vision. It's a real soft, desaturated look. So now it's giving me tone, clarity, and Orton. Huh. Okay, so here's what I'm going to say right off the bat. That I don't really want the presets. I'm going to turn the presets panel, just make that go away. And I'm going to treat this like Lightroom, and that doesn't have presets. And I'm just going to start from scratch working on my photo and see what happens. I'm not sure. I'm not sure how the workflow goes from here. I guess I just work down the palettes as I see fit. I can add some layers and start doing that sort of work. But if I want to go back to presets, I don't know if that resets everything or if it adds it on top of. So let's try it. So I'm just going to go ahead and start working on this photo a little bit. I'm going to bring the exposure up a little. Now it looks like I'm blowing out my highlights when I do that. So I'm actually going to start down here with highlights and pull those down. And it's interesting because in my histogram in Lightroom, I was not blowing out or clipping the highlights. But it looks like here, okay, I've removed that now by dropping highlights 100%. It looks like here I was clipping. So now I'm going to bring up exposure, which should be midtones. And it looks like it is. And I'm going to bring up shadows. And let's see if I can recover the shadows. Just so you know, the shot was made with the Sony a7R Mark II, which has a really good broad dynamic range. And so unless my shadows are just completely clipped, there should be some detail in that wheel well. It looks like I'm pulling some out. And I'm actually pretty happy with how that looks. I don't want to extract too much from the darkness. I do like some shadow to remain. And then there's this smart tone slider. This is one that they had in Aurora, and this sort of does some magic with the midtones. And so I'm going to go ahead and bring this up. And I'm going to go ahead and bring up contrast because things are starting to look a little HDR. And I don't want that. I want my photo to look a little more directly lit, less ethereal. And I want to bring my blacks up just a touch, see if I can get those. So there's some shadow detail in that wheel well. So I'm just going to open that up a little bit, but I'm going to boost my contrast again so I can keep my midtones from looking washed out. All right, so I pushed on that pretty hard, and I would say based on my years of experience with Lightroom that this feels a lot like Lightroom so far. My impression from reading about Luminar was it was going to be a lot more muscular. And I would say right now, just in the tone palette, that it's pretty restrained. It's not like a big heavy hammer. I'm not beating on this image by pulling on these things as hard as I have pulled on them. So let's see that. Before we go any further, I realize that this thing is crooked, and I'm really not wanting that. So I clicked on the transform tool, and this hopefully is going to allow me to straighten the image. Oh, I guess it's the other way. One of the things that I miss already from Lightroom that I've gotten used to having is the ability to use a transform tool by drawing lines, finding some vertical or horizontal lines in the image that I want to make vertical and horizontal and just drawing over them and having the software line things up. But in this case, I'm just doing a simple rotate, and it's going to give me some crookedness here in just a minute. So I'm looking at those little lightning rods at the top of the barn and the right edge of the bottom of the barn, which is a straight line. It should be straight up and down. This barn wasn't leaning, so the horizon is not straight. It's a hill, so I can't use that. I have to use verticals, and I'm going to stick with that, and that is a really tough angle. And when I click OK or apply, it's going to give me these gray areas. Now, I'm pretty sure that I would just have to crop those out in Luminar, that there's no content aware option that I've seen so far that's going to give me the ability to smart fill those in. So let's just go ahead and crop this then. Kind of pains me to do that. I've gotten used to having the ability in Adobe to sort of smart fill any empty spaces that I create by skewing an image. But in this case, I'm not really losing any composition here by cropping, and so we'll go ahead and apply the crop. One thing I'm noticing here, this is not especially snappy. I'm running this on a iMac, 5K iMac that's loaded, maxed out on RAM. It's got the fast hard drive. I don't know why. I don't know why I'm seeing a progress bar on some of this stuff, but give it the benefit of the doubt. So I'm going to come down here. My sky is starting to look a little bit pink, and I don't want it to be pink. I don't think it was that pink. So I'm going to come down to color balance, and I want highlights. Well, I don't know what I did in the toning process that pulled color away, but I think that I can use the color temperature sliders and things to get things back. Now, one of the things I'm not seeing here is an eyedropper under color temperature, and that is something I really rely on in Lightroom, being able to grab the eyedropper and going to something that's neutral and click on that. Like these roof tiles on the roof shingles on this barn would be perfect. The metal silo would be great, neutral gray. But there's no way for me to, there's no tool that allows me to go over and kind of grab it. So I have to eyeball it, which I've learned over the years not to trust my eyeballs as much as I should, as much as I'd like to, because I tend to missee color sometimes as I get older. For those of you who are younger, enjoy your eyeballs while you got them, because they do degrade, let me tell you. So I'm going to go back up here to advanced contrast. I've kind of tweaked color a little bit. I'm not thrilled with it, but we're going to stick with what we've got for now. And I'm going to go ahead and see, by bringing up the highlight contrast, it looks like it's trying to put contrast in the sky, which is fairly low contrast texture. Balance highlight. So if I push that to the right, looks like it darkened the highlights a little bit. Push it to the left. Not really sure what this advanced contrast thing is doing for me. One thing I'm noticing is it's taking a while for when I move a slider, it does take a while for this to render. It's a bit frustrating. Lightroom does that a little bit, but this seems to be a little bit slower. This is a full res raw file. This is a 42 megapixel shot, so I am, giving it a lot to work with, but shouldn't, on this computer, it should not be bogging down. So yeah, like now it says down there image processing. So every time I move a slider, I'm getting about a 3 to 4 second pause that I have to wait to see it render. Bit frustrating. So I'm liking this so far. I'm starting to see some progress. I'm still not thrilled. I feel like I'd be done probably at this point in Lightroom. So I know there's a learning curve here, so I'm not gonna pass judgment just yet. But so details enhancer adds a highlight protection, which is kind of nice. Bring that up. I'll bring large details. This will give the photo a real nice, strong edginess that I like in my outdoor photos. Certainly wouldn't be pushing on this like this if this is a portrait, but for here I'm good. I'm going to bring exposure up just a little bit. Now, I don't know how this exposure is any different than the exposure in the tone slider. It could be exactly the same thing. In fact, by looking at the histogram, it looks like it is. So I'm actually going to bring this back down because I don't want to double duty that. And I'm just actually going to get rid of that panel altogether. Foliage enhancer. Okay, this is that new one. So let's see what this does to the grass. Oh, that's hue. I don't know if I want to change the grass color, but I do want to turn it up a little bit. So let's see what this does here. Whoa! It just went Hawaii green on me. This grass was green, but it was not neon. So a little bit goes a long way with the foliage enhancer. And push that back down like 15, 16. I like it, but man, you could really get in trouble with that. Okay, hue, saturation, and luminance. I'm not going to mess with right now. Image radiance. Let's play with that. This is something I enjoy working with in Aurora. It can give a photograph a really nice romantic warmth. I think a lot of times, especially with this orange truck, I think having a little bit of glow on that might help this photo a little bit. Okay, microstructure. Let's turn it up and see what this does with those shingles on the roof. And wait for it. Wait for it. Let's soften that just a little bit more. All right. Let's call that good on that one. But I'm tired of waiting for this to render. Polarizing filter. I'm just going to pull this up. And it really seems to be working on just the sky for the most part. A little bit on the roof. So I'm going to be easy with that one. Saturation and vibrance I'm not going to mess with right now. Sharpening I'll bring up a little bit. Now, we already did the details enhancer. So sharpening this, it probably should have sharpened before I did detail enhancement so that I'm not sharpening already crunchy edges of things. So I'm just going to put a little bit on there and I'm going to crank the masking up so I don't sharpen the sky and the smooth portions of the image. So far, I'm not seeing any artifacts in this. I'm not seeing anything crazy come out of the processing, which is nice. Structure. Don't think I want to add any structure to this. I've already got a lot of crispness in the shot. So let's go ahead and add a slight vignette. Oh, it's going the other way. And then I want to feather it all the way. Call that good. All right, so I'm going to click apply and let's see what happens to this image. See what it does to it. Does it send it back to Lightroom as a TIFF? Does it send it back as a DNG? Does it replace the original RAW file? Which, if it does, I'll have to go back to my hard drive and get the copy and bring it back into Lightroom. We'll see. Right now, my jury is still out on this software. I think that I can see using it for certain types of photographs, but not every photo. The time that I'm having to wait for it to render is frustrating. Maybe there's something in the preferences I can tweak to accelerate that. Maybe there's a graphics checkbox I need to put on or something like that. So it's importing this file. There it goes. I'm going to go ahead and go back to... Okay, so it's interesting. So it's created a box in the collections palette, or the collections panel in Lightroom called Luminar, and it's given me it drops it in there. So it's creating an automatic collection. I don't mind that. I think that's probably pretty good, but I'm going to click on the main library here. And let's see. It does. It looks like it brought it back as a TIFF. So interesting thing to note, if you're going to process a raw file with Luminar, so transfer the original raw untouched from Lightroom to Luminar, send it back to Lightroom, it comes back as a TIFF, which is not so bad. That's what I usually do with Photoshop or Aurora or anything else. So expecting it to come back as a DNG was probably too much to ask. And I look at it here in Lightroom. Looks all right. Here's it next to the original. We'll put it in survey mode here. So the original's on the left. I mean, it's definitely looks better. Is it print ready? I don't know. It would be ready to go on Facebook or Flickr. I wouldn't hesitate to send this out right now as it is. There's some things I notice about it that I don't like. There's some haloing on the back side of the barn against the lighted part of the sky. It looks really obvious now that I'm stepping back and looking at it here. There is some color issues with the reds in the shot. They look a little purple now, which I don't like. I'm sure there's a way for me to adjust that. The sky looks pretty muddy, but it does look better than... I was going to say it looks better than the original, but not much better. It's not... Because of that haloing around the barn, I'm a little bit not thrilled with the sky on this. The shadows look great. Pulling out that shadow detail in that wheel well and inside the cab of the truck, really, it looks good. The sharpening is really nice. The grass looks vivid, crisp. I can see every blade of grass, see the details in the cracking of the paint on the truck and in the rust. And I really like that, and I expected that from Macphun product. Is this worth $60, which is the pre-release price? If you pre-ordered it before yesterday, you could get it for $60. If you're already a Macphun customer, you got it for $50, which is what I paid. Is it worth $50? Absolutely. I can see myself using it occasionally for special projects, things I want to really punch up, have fun with. Maybe I want to make a big metal print. I would probably run it through here. I need to do some tests to see how it compares to Aurora. I think Aurora does a lot of this stuff pretty well. In fact, in using this, I would say it's very similar to Aurora in a lot of respects. And I think maybe the Macphun guys would be mad to hear that because they're supposed to be two distinct products. But if you already own Aurora, maybe you got what you need already in the box. So I don't know. Does it replace Lightroom for me? Not right now. I find that the cumbersomeness of moving it to a Luminar, them not having some of the tools that I want. There's no dust spot removal tool. There's a clone and stamp tool, but that's not the same as Lightroom's healing brush. It just you have to choose every time you use it, you have to choose a source and then clone it old-fashioned style. And Lightroom, it's an automated process where it bang, 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 and I can just hit those dust spots that I always have in my skies because I shoot a Sony and it's a mirrorless camera and there's always dust on my sensor. And so I'm always cloning out dust spots in the sky. And I think that the lack of having lens corrections, lack of having an automated dust spot removal tool is an issue. That lagginess that I'm seeing in rendering disappoints me. But otherwise, I think it's great. It's not Lightroom. It's different, which is good. So there you have it. That's my initial gut reaction to my first run through of a photo processing in Luminar from Macphun. Wonderful company. I'm glad they're doing what they're doing. If anything, it's just one more tool for us to have, and I can never have enough tools. I think that knowing which software does best with certain situations is important. I don't believe there is a perfect software, just like there's no such thing as a perfect camera or a perfect camera bag or anything like that. It's a matter of having the right tool for the right job. And I think that this is a valuable tool to have. Would I pay $200 for it? No. If I wasn't a Lightroom user, if I had, if I was using just photos or maybe I was a holdout using Aperture and I was ready to move on and I didn't want to commit to the Adobe Creative Cloud subscription plan. This would be really tempting because it does have a lot of the tools that I would find in Lightroom. And I think for most people, once you figure out the nuances of the software, it probably would be a good standalone image editor. You'd have to figure out a cataloging system. So there's that. Yeah, it's cool. It's cool. All right, enough of me rambling on. Thanks so much for watching this video. This was Mason Marsh with a quick look and gut check reaction of Macphun's brand new photo editing software called Luminar. Thanks so much for watching. Bye.